Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you've been with us on this journey of remarkable tales behind seemingly ordinary coins, you know that the smallest pieces of metal can carry the biggest stories. And today's story might just be the most jaw-dropping of all. Because what if I told you that a single 1-cent coin from 1999, minted in Denver, ended up being sold for an unbelievable $214 million? That's right. 1 penny. A 1999 D. Lincoln cent that changed not just the life of one man, but sent shockwaves across the entire numismatic world and beyond. So grab a drink, sit back, and get ready for one of the wildest coin tales in history. It all started in the quiet suburbs of Mesa, Arizona. Not exactly a place where earth-shattering historical discoveries are made, right? But fate had different plans for a retired mechanic named Harold Jenkins. Harold had spent the better part of 40 years fixing up classic American muscle cars, the kind that roared on highways in the 60s and 70s. When he finally hung up his wrench in 2015, he wasn't looking for anything extravagant. He moved into a modest 2-bedroom home with his dog Charlie and planned to spend his golden years restoring a '67 GTO in his garage. What Harold didn't know was that the most valuable possession he would ever own was tucked away in an old coffee tin filled with pennies he'd saved since the 1980s. Now Harold was never a collector? Not in the traditional sense. He just had this habit of dumping his loose change into whatever container was nearby. Coffee tins, empty pickle jars, even a rusted-out toolbox in his shed. He'd always figured he'd roll them up one day and take them to the bank. But life has a funny way of rearranging priorities, and so those pennies just sat there. Until one day, Charlie, his golden retriever, knocked over the coffee tin while chasing a fly. The pennies spilled across the hardwood floor like a small metallic river. Grumbling under his breath, Harold dropped to his knees and began scooping them up. That's when he saw it. A penny unlike any other. At first glance, it looked like every other Lincoln cent. Copper-plated zinc, Lincoln's profile facing right, the words, "In God We Trust," etched along the top. But this one felt different. It was oddly pristine. Not shiny, exactly, but almost too perfect. The mint mark said D for Denver, and the date was clearly 1999. But the engraving looked sharper, more precise. And then Harold noticed something strange on the reverse side. The Lincoln Memorial looked slightly off. The columns were crisper, but what really caught his attention was a faint engraving, something behind the memorial, barely visible unless held at just the right angle under the light. It appeared to be a tiny inscription, almost microscopic. Curious and baffled, Harold fetched his old magnifying glass from the garage. There it was. A second inscription that read AEP1. Harold had no idea what that meant. Now, most folks would have shrugged and tossed it back in with the rest. But Harold's curiosity had been stirred. That night, instead of watching reruns of westerns like he usually did, he booted up his ancient desktop computer, logged onto a spotty internet connection, and began searching for any information on 1999 D pennies with strange engravings. Nothing popped up immediately. Forums were filled with folks arguing about die cracks, double dies, and mint errors. But nobody mentioned AEP1. So Harold posted a blurry picture of the coin on a coin collector forum called Coppercore, asking if anyone had ever seen something like it. The response was lukewarm at first. A few users said it might be a die clash or some sort of tool mark. But one user, with the handle PennyProfit92, replied privately, "I think you may have found something very rare." The message read, "Don't take it to a pawn shop. Don't clean it. Can you send me better photos?" Harold was skeptical but intrigued. He borrowed a friend's iPhone, took close-up photos of both sides, and sent them along. What followed was a chain reaction that spiraled completely out of Harold's control. Within 48 hours, his inbox was flooded. Collectors, historians, even numismatists from the Smithsonian wanted to know more about this coin. And then, 3 days later, a man in a grey suit showed up at Harold's door. He introduced himself as Anthony Wexler, a private curator for the Langford Institute of Rare American Artifacts. "I believe you have something extremely important," he said. Harold, still in his slippers, offered the man a cup of coffee and listened as Wexler explained that the coin might be a prototype, an experimental pattern never meant for circulation. The code AEP1 possibly stood for Alloy Experiment, Prototype 1. In 1999, there had been internal talks within the US Mint about shifting to a new alloy due to rising metal costs. Officially, nothing came of it. But what if, Wexler mused, a few test pieces had been minted and accidentally released into circulation? Harold was stunned. He'd always thought of pennies as, well, pennies. Not historic prototypes worth potentially millions. Word got out. CoinWorld published an article titled The 1 Cent Enigma. Numismatic News followed suit. Offers began rolling in. First it was $25,000. Then $100,000. A coin collector from Taiwan offered $500,000, but the real twist came when a Swiss billionaire named Klaus Richter flew to Arizona in his private jet. He arrived with a translator, a legal team, and a sealed briefcase. He offered $3.1 million for the coin. In cash, Harold almost fainted, but before the deal could be finalized, something extraordinary happened. A retired US Mint engraver named Walter Beasley stepped forward with shocking testimony. He claimed to have worked on a secret project in the late 1990s testing new alloy compositions designed to withstand extreme temperatures and pressures. According to him, the AEP1 project had minted only 7 test coins, each made with a unique metallic blend capable of surviving space travel conditions. Yes, space. Beasley testified under oath to a private investigative panel that NASA had been involved, hoping to create currency that could function in off-world colonies. The project was scrapped due to budget concerns and internal pushback, but not before a small batch of coins were struck and supposed to be destroyed, except, apparently, at least one escaped destruction. That turned everything upside down. The US Mint went into damage control. They denied all allegations of the AEP1 project. But then a classified document surfaced, leaked by a whistleblower inside NASA, confirming collaboration with the Mint on a project called Centurion Initiative. The goal? To create multifunctional currency for long-term missions, coins that doubled as data storage, identification keys, and chemical sensors. Independent labs tested Harold's coin. The results were staggering. The coin's alloy included traces of scandium, yttrium, and other rare earth elements not found in any US currency. Even more astonishing was a microscopic data chip embedded inside the coin's core. Experts confirmed it could store up to 512 kilobytes of encrypted data, unheard of for the late 90s. Suddenly, this wasn't just a rare penny. It was a technological marvel. A relic of a secret government program that could have changed the future of human civilization. A hybrid between money and machine. That's when the offers skyrocketed. Christie's announced a private auction. Invitations were sent to elite collectors, tech moguls, even defense contractors. The auction was set for Geneva, and security was tighter than at a state summit. Harold flew in under an alias, accompanied by a team of lawyers and 2 federal agents, just in case. The bidding war was fierce. Amazon's founder reportedly bid $102 million. An anonymous bidder from Saudi Arabia raised the bar to $150 million. But it was a last-minute bid from a South African AI company that stunned the room. $214 million. Paid in cryptocurrency and secured by a private equity consortium, the hammer dropped. Harold became an instant legend, but he didn't blow the money on yachts or mansions. He donated half to veterans organizations and space exploration scholarships. The rest? He quietly bought a small island off the coast of Oregon and built a solar-powered auto shop where he teaches teens how to fix engines. As for the coin, it was never seen in public again. Rumors persist that it was dismantled and reverse-engineered by a secret tech lab working on spacebound microcurrency systems. Others say it's locked away in a cryovault beneath the Swiss Alps. A few conspiracy theorists believe it was destroyed to erase any trace of the Centurion Initiative, but Harold doesn't care. He still keeps that old coffee tin in his garage. Still walks Charlie every morning. Still drinks the same coffee from the same chipped mug. The only difference is that once in a while, when the sky is clear and the air is quiet, he looks up at the stars and smiles, because he knows the truth, that in a world filled with distractions and noise, sometimes the smallest things, a forgotten penny, a strange engraving, a curious glance, can change everything. And that's the story of the 1999 D1-cent coin that rewrote history and became the most valuable penny ever sold. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time with another unbelievable tale from the world of coins you'll never look at the same way again. Next 1986 D1-cent USA coin. It's always a pleasure to have you here, diving deep into another extraordinary tale from the world of rare coins, the kind of story that sounds almost too incredible to be true. But stick around, because you won't want to miss a single moment. Today's journey takes us into the mysterious, awe-inspiring world of the 1986 D1-cent coin, a seemingly ordinary penny that somehow became one of the most valuable pieces of metal ever discovered. Valued at an astonishing $242 million, this particular coin is not only a rare anomaly in numismatic history but a piece of treasure that changed the lives of everyone who came into contact with it. You won't believe the twists, the turns, and the sheer luck that brought this coin to light. It all began in a forgotten suburb on the outskirts of Denver, Colorado, where an elderly man named Walter Hastings lived in a crumbling Victorian house that had seen better days. Walter, a retired railroad worker, was known to his neighbors as quiet, maybe even a bit eccentric, with his long gray beard, habit of collecting junk, and peculiar obsession with metal detectors. He'd walk the same route every morning, down old dirt trails and alongside rusted fence lines, scanning the ground with a clunky detector he'd owned for decades. People smiled at him, waved, and thought little of his hobby, never imagining that he would one day discover something that would leave experts stunned and millionaires envious. One frigid morning in early March, Walter set out as usual, coffee thermos in hand and detector strapped across his shoulder. Snow had melted just enough to expose patches of dirt, and his instincts told him something was waiting for him in the thawing earth. As he walked along the edge of an abandoned lot, the detector began to squeal. The sound wasn't strong, but it was steady, persistent. Kneeling carefully, he used a plastic trowel to dig into the soil, uncovering broken glass, a rusted nail, and finally, a small, circular object caked in grime. It was a penny, at least that's what it looked like at first. Dirty, worn, and seemingly worthless. Walter pocketed it without a second thought, planning to toss it into one of the many jars he kept back home. But later that evening, as he cleaned his finds under the yellow glow of his kitchen light, he noticed something strange. The penny was dated 1986 and had the Denver Mint mark, but the coloration was off, and the weight didn't seem quite right. Curious, he pulled out his tiny kitchen scale. The reading came in lighter than expected. Walter wasn't an expert, but something about the coin nagged at him. The next day, he drove into town and visited an old friend, Carl, who ran a cluttered antique shop and moonlighted as an amateur coin dealer. Carl chuckled at first when Walter pulled out the coin, until he held it in his hand and felt the difference for himself. The edges were slightly off-center, and the texture felt unusual. Carl examined it under a magnifier, his expression changing as he noticed an odd doubling on the lettering and an extremely rare die clash across Lincoln's jawline. Carl made some calls. He wasn't sure what he was looking at, but he knew enough to bring in someone who could help. That someone was Rebecca Lane, a numismatist from the regional museum with a sharp eye and a sharper reputation. When she arrived the next day, she took one look at the penny and gasped. It wasn't just any 1986 D-cent, it had traits she'd only seen in books, and even those were thought to be theoretical, perhaps minted as tests or errors that were never supposed to leave the mint. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the penny on a precision scale, took high-resolution photos, and began listing the anomalies: misalignment, unusual composition, double die, incorrect planchette weight, and most astonishing of all, signs that the coin had elements of both copper and a rare alloy believed to be used only for experimental minting processes. That year, word spread quickly. The coin was authenticated, re-authenticated, and analyzed under electron microscopes. It was declared a unique hybrid, a one-of-a-kind artifact never meant to exist. Its rarity was beyond calculation. Walter, who had spent a lifetime living on pensions and goodwill, suddenly found himself at the center of a media frenzy. Reporters camped outside his home, numismatic forums exploded with speculation, and museums offered to showcase the coin for staggering fees. Then came the collectors. The first offer was $12 million, made quietly by a Silicon Valley billionaire with a passion for oddities. Walter declined. More offers poured in: $25 million, $37 million, then $50 million. Each time, Walter paused, consulted Carl and Rebecca, and politely refused. To him, it wasn't just a coin, it was fate, a reward from the universe for a lifetime of being overlooked. But the real shock came 6 months later when a secretive international auction house sent a representative to Colorado. They came with a letter of intent, backed by anonymous buyers believed to be among the wealthiest people on the planet. The offer: $242 million, all cash, in exchange for the exclusive rights and possession of the coin. Walter accepted, under the condition that a full replica would be made and donated to the Denver Mint Museum with a plaque commemorating the find. Overnight, he became a legend. The story dominated headlines, with some calling it the greatest numismatic discovery in American history. Walter used his wealth to fund scholarships, renovate his neighborhood, and build a new home for himself that he jokingly called Penny Palace. But he never lost the humble ways that led him to that muddy lot. Years passed, and the legend of the 1986 descent only grew. Speculation arose about how it came to be, with theories ranging from rogue mint employees experimenting after hours, to a clandestine government program trying out new alloys for classified reasons. No explanation ever quite satisfied the experts. What they did know was this: the coin had no business existing, and yet it did, etched in copper, tin, and mystery. It became more than a collector's item. It was a symbol of how history can hide in plain sight, how fortunes can be found in the most unremarkable places. Collectors tried to hunt down another one, hoping lightning would strike twice, but nothing came close. Other 1986 descents were examined, tested, dissected, but they were all mundane, mass-produced, and valueless by comparison. The unique composition of Walter's coin defied logic. Some conspiracy theorists even suggested it had extraterrestrial origins or was the result of time travel. As absurd as those ideas were, they fed into the mystique and legend that made the coin a pop culture icon. It was referenced in films, books, and documentaries. Artists created sculptures of it. One rapper even had a tattoo of the coin inked across his chest. And for Walter, the man who never wanted more than a quiet life and a good cup of coffee, it was a daily reminder that sometimes, against all odds, the universe nods in your direction. But that wasn't the end of the story. Years after Walter's passing, his granddaughter discovered an old journal in the attic of the Penny Palace. It contained pages and pages of notes, detailed records of every place Walter had ever used his metal detector, sketches of coin imprints, theories about minting errors, and one strange line that stood out among the rest: two made, one found. It sparked a renewed frenzy in the coin world. Was there another out there? Treasure hunters mobilized. Theories were mapped. Old mint employees were interviewed. Some claimed they remembered whispers about a test run of a new composition that was scrapped before production. Others dismissed it as myth. But the journal's implications were tantalizing. If there was another, its value could eclipse even the original. The idea that one more $242 million penny could be buried in someone's backyard reignited the coin collecting community. Metal detector sales soared. YouTube channels and TikToks sprang up overnight, tracking the supposed second coin. The search became a global obsession, and somewhere, in an unassuming corner of America, it might still be waiting. So the next time you pass by a penny on the sidewalk, think twice before walking away. You never know what history might be hiding in your pocket change. The 1986 D1 cent coin proved that even the smallest objects can carry the greatest value, not just in money, but in mystery, wonder, and the thrill of discovery. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time with another unbelievable tale.